Welcome to Untold Lore's terrify, Part 4 of 4. The generator died and the darkness came down so completely it had weight. I could feel it pressing against my open eyes. I stood on the third floor landing with one hand on the cold iron railing and I did not move. Below me, in the corridor at the tower's base, the breathing continued. Slow and wet and patient. The way something breathes when it has been waiting for a very long time, and is not concerned about waiting a little longer. I understood something in that moment that I have understood every day since. It was not here for me the way a predator is there for its prey. It was here for me the way a debt collector is here for a debtor. It had been owed something by my family for 138 years and I was the next name on the ledger. I made a decision. I could not go down. The only other direction was up. 4 floors above me was the lantern room. The room where every previous Malone had been found. The room the inscriptions had been trying to warn me away from. But the lantern room had something the rest of the tower did not. A radio, outdated, maritime emergency issue, hardwired into the tower's own power circuit and therefore independent of my dead generator. I had tested it on day 1 and logged the frequency. I began to climb. I kept one hand on the railing and I moved as quietly as a man can move on iron stairs in the dark, which is not very quietly at all. I heard my own boots on the steps. I heard my own breathing, and I heard the breathing below me stop. That pause was worse than anything, the sudden silence from below, and then, a moment later, the slow wet exhalation resuming but closer. It was moving. It was following me up. I climbed faster. 4th floor, empty. 5th floor landing, the door to the lantern room above me. I pushed through it and pulled it shut behind me and stood in the lantern room with my back against the door. The room was circular. All glass from chest height to ceiling, the great dead lens in the center, the Atlantic visible in every direction under a sky that had gone a deep bruised purple. The moonlight came through the glass panels and it was the most light I had seen in hours. I found the radio in 40 seconds. I got a signal. I pressed the emergency frequency and I spoke. I gave my location. I gave my name. The response came back immediately. A Coast Guard relay station on the mainland. They had already received a distress call from this location 2 hours ago. I told them I had not made a distress call 2 hours ago. There was a pause. They told me the call had given this location and a name. They told me the name. It was Sharon Malone. It was my name. Spoken in a voice that was, according to the relay operator, unusual. Very low, very wet, like the person calling was speaking through water. I told the Coast Guard to send a boat immediately. I pressed my back against the door and I waited and I held myself very still. And that was when I heard the sound from the center of the room. Not from the door, not from below, from the lantern itself. From the space behind the great glass lens, where the gears and mechanisms of the old light sat in a housing that I had not thought to look inside. A slow breath, one long wet exhalation. From inside the room, I turned. The entity was standing beside the lens housing. It had not come through the door. It had simply been here, waiting, as the inscription had said it waited, patient and specific and owed. In the full moonlight flooding through the glass I could see it completely for the first time. The skin was not skin in any meaningful sense. It was a membrane, gray, white and translucent, pulled taut over angles that were not quite right over a skeleton that had too many joints in the wrong places. The face was the worst thing I have ever seen on this earth. The jaw had separated on the left side. Fully, completely, the hinge broken or rotted through, and the mouth hung open in a permanent, toneless gape that showed the full length of the gray, black teeth and the darkness of the throat beyond them, a darkness that went further back than it should, further than the skull could possibly contain. The eye sockets were open holes, and in the light I could see what I had not been able to see through glass or at night. There was movement in those sockets, not eyes. The darkness in them moved, slowly, shifting like deep water with a current beneath. Its hands were at its sides, but as I watched it raised one, slowly, with the jerking, repositioning quality it had, still, then suddenly moved without transition, and extended it toward me. The fingers were 30 centimeters long. They were reaching for my face. I pressed back against the door and I could not speak and I could not look away and the cold had entered my chest and my lungs and my arms and I was shaking in a way I had never shaken before. And it came to me, looking into those hollow shifting sockets, what the pattern had been all along. Not murder, not malice. The drowning records, the found men, the inscriptions, the phrase written beside each body. He is coming home. It was not a threat. It was an answer. The men had not been killed. They had gone to the water. They had gone to the water because something in the water had called them, and they had heard it and gone. Drake Malone in 1886. The body never recovered. He had not drowned by accident. He had walked in. He had walked into something that had claimed him and his descendants down through every generation until it stood here, in this room in front of me, with its ruined face and its two long hands reaching. I do not know how to explain what happened next in a way that does not make me sound like a man who has lost his grip on what is real. I will tell you only what I know. I did not move. I did not run. It reached my face and I felt the tips of those fingers. Cold, wet, smooth, harder than flesh, touch my cheek. And then the Coast Guard boat's searchlight swept across the glass of the lantern room from the sea below, flooding the space with hard white light. And the entity was not there. Between one blink and the next, gone. I slid down the door to the floor and I sat there until I heard boots on the iron stairs. A Coast Guard officer opened the door and found me sitting on the floor of the lantern room with my back against the door and my camera, which I did not remember picking up, recording. It had been recording for 40 minutes. I have watched the footage many times since. I will not describe all of it. But I will tell you this. For the last 40 minutes of that footage, from the moment I entered the lantern room, the entity is visible in the room with me, standing beside the lens housing, not moving for the first 32 minutes while I worked the radio with my back to it, completely unaware. Then slowly, beginning to turn its face toward me. I was not a documentary filmmaker making a piece about a legend. I had been the subject of the documentary the whole time, and somewhere, in a coastal county in Ireland, in a genealogical record in Dublin, in the water off the western shore, there is a name on a list after mine. My son is 7 years old. His name is Ciaran Malone. He has my eyes. Last week he told me at breakfast, with the particular calm that children use for things they do not yet know should frighten them, that a very tall man comes to stand outside his window at night. He says the man doesn't say anything. He just breathes. Last week he told me at breakfast, with the particular calm that children use for things they do not yet know should frighten them, that a very tall man comes to stand outside his window at night. He says the man doesn't say anything. He just breathes. That's it for part 4. Follow Untold Lores for part 1 of our next story. Like and subscribe for daily stories.